Well, for the people tuning this after this, our intro was just as good as I guess week one has been so far. So pretty sloppy, pretty ugly. So hey, here we are. It is
Par for the course.
week one has come to mostly a close at this point. But we would got away with mostly unscathed. Yes, there were some injuries. Obviously, we're going to talk about the big one. That's J.K. Dobbins. Sadly, tore his Achilles
Yeah,
today. You don't even
brutal.
know. I mean, honestly, his career could be over. I mean, you're talking about a player who's going to be hitting free agency after this year. He suffered multiple major injuries, and we've seen this injury really take a long time for players to truly come back from. And so, it's just been a shame for him. I mean, every year we were like, okay, this is going to be the year he's going to get going, and he was actually looking great, right? To start this game, scored. I think he believe he scored a touchdown,
Yep.
and then of course he right as they get to the goal line he gets hurt. It didn't even look that major because he was able to get up and walk off. So like I didn't think it was anything like that. But anyways,
Yeah.
that being said, let's just get into
Rough.
it. The carnage of that was week one, and not just the injuries, but just the play. I mean, it was pretty gross out there. So let's first things first. Let's hit on
You want me to hit running back first? I just realized you
no.
didn't have your
See, people are trying to understand. Like,
amateur hour. Amateur hour.
let's talk about the quarterbacks. All right. So there's really not a lot of talk about when it comes to waivers this week in terms of quarterbacks. Most people, again, you're playing the guys you drafted. If you are streaming, I think Jordan Love is the one that really stands out to me. They get Atlanta this week. He's only rostered in 31% of leagues, but he really carried over everything that he did in the preseason. He looked really good today. 15 of 27 passes, 245 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He also rushed 3 times for 12 yards, good for 23 fantasy points. They also did this without Christian Watson. Christian Watson, I think, has a good shot of returning for week 2. And next week they get a road matchup in a dome against the Atlanta Falcons, who did allow the 12th most fantasy points to quarterbacks in 2022. I don't really take away anything that defense did today. They were playing the Panthers, and Bryce Young looked like a rookie quarterback out there. So I do think Jordan Love is the one that makes the most sense, and I actually think maybe he has some staying power. Somebody that we were not just looking at just a short term ad. So Jordan Love is somebody that I definitely like, and I think really everything that he was able to do preseason to now is really carrying over, and so he looks really solid. Right, next up you have Brock Purdy. Completed 19 of 29 today for 220 yards, 2 touchdowns, 16.8 fantasy points against a really solid Steelers defense. They really had this game in the bag pretty much by the first half, so they really were able to take their foot off the gas here. But Brock Purdy really did look pretty good today, kind of carrying over again what he did last year. So, this next week they do get a matchup against the LA Rams. I know the LA Rams were able to pretty much put their will on the Seattle Seahawks. I don't expect that to be what we see moving forward. I do think this Rams secondary is still not very good, but usually it takes the offense a little bit more time to catch up to the defenses. So we'll see on that. Other than that, you have Mac Jones. I have no faith in this. You really have to be pretty damn desperate to be adding Mac Jones, 8% rostered. However, after a slow start to that game that was also pretty ugly against a stout defense in the Eagles, he did throw for 316 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception for 25 fantasy points. Now they do get to take on a Miami defense that did allow a 70% completion percentage to the Chargers on Sunday, but Mac Jones, I think, is somebody you could look at as an option. And then lastly, Derek Carr against Carolina. Derek Carr did throw for over 300 passing yards today, but other than that, I think those are the guys. Really, it comes down to Jordan Love and probably Brock Purdy is the only two that I really would look at.
Let's go ahead and kick it over to the running backs, Kev, like you're talking about at the top of the show. Obviously, the big piece of news was the J.K. Dobbins injury. Achilles tear, he is done. So the guys that I have marked here, obviously, you're going to be looking to pick up one of the Ravens running backs. I really don't have a strong lead in terms of which one I would be targeting. I think, if you have a fab system, you kind of just put the same money in for both of them, see if you get one of them. And then, same thing goes for if you just have like the regular waiver priority. Both these guys had 8 carries. Justice Hill did have 4 more snaps than Gus Edwards did run 2 more routes, but I'm not really taking a ton away from this game. Obviously, Gus Edwards has, a little bit more of the Ravens backing him, I guess, has a little bit more history with the team. Justice Hill has been someone, it seems like it's somebody that they like, considering the draft capital that they had spent on him a few years ago, kept him around. I think he was someone who actually had an Achilles tear a few years ago, or at least he had a pretty major injury. I think it might have been a Achilles, but either way, I really don't have a strong lean. Um, I think Justice Hill obviously profiles more as the pass catching type back, and Gus Edwards is kind of more the early down guy. But we really didn't get a great look at what this new offense could potentially look like either. Lamar Jackson obviously didn't have a great game. Zay Flowers did. Looks like he's already established himself as the top wide receiver there. But outside of that, like I said, I think you're fine with either guy. Unfortunately, I really don't have a strong feeling either way. What I do have a strong feeling about is you should have picked up Kenny Gainwell when I was talking about it. He's my top pickup of the week. I would rather pick up Gainwell than either of the Ravens running backs. He saw 18 opportunities today compared to a combined 5 for Swift and Boston Scott. Rashad Penny was a healthy scratch. So Gainwell is the guy that I would want here. And then Zach Moss, Deion Jackson had a chance to do something with his touches, especially after Evan Hall went out, and he did not. He did not really do much with the opportunity that he was given. So Zach Moss is the guy that I would be looking to pick up. He's still pretty highly available across most leagues. Then some guys in kind of like that handcuff plus territory. Tyler Algier. He's on the fringe here. He is rostered about 45% of ESPN leagues, but if he's out there, he needs to be added. Talked about this heading into week 1 that Algier could have some standalone value alongside Bijan. I definitely don't expect Algier to out carry Bijan many more times this year, but with this team willing to line up and run it 30 plus times a game, Algier is definitely going to find himself in the flex discussion. Also, not expecting Algier to find the end zone twice every single week either. Jalen Warren, we were kind of talking about this as well in this situation in terms of what we need to monitor. He was taking some early down snaps as well as some pass catching snaps away from Najee Harris. So Jalen Warren is definitely kind of, might have some flex value in deeper leagues. Not going to be looking to start him in 10-team leagues or lower, but in deeper leagues, he's certainly in that flex discussion. And then if anything were to happen to Najee, obviously he is going to be the go-to guy there. Tank Bigsby kind of, didn't have a great rookie debut. He did fumble. He was responsible for an interception, but he did see 8 opportunities on just 15 snaps, did find the end zone. Certainly worth picking up at under 28% rostership. Tyjae Spears is someone who I'm excited about as well. We thought that he would be taking away some passing work from Henry, but today he also took away some early down work from Derrick Henry as well. I don't think he's like an every week flex start, but he's absolutely someone who needs to have a higher roster percentage than what he's currently sitting at 12%. Tyjae Spears actually had the 3rd most targets on the team, ran 20 routes to Derrick Henry's 10. Kyron Williams, Cam Akers looked not good in this game, and absolutely pitiful. 1.3 yards per carry, put up 29 yards on 22 carries. Now, it's not like Kyron Williams was electric by any means. He only had 3.5 yards per carry, but he still gained 23 more yards on 7 fewer carries than Cam Akers did. Kyron Williams also found the end zone twice. He did see 2 targets, didn't record a catch, though. I'm not entirely sure of the route and run numbers on this game between Williams and Akers, so I haven't seen that information yet. But if Akers continues to struggle like this going forward, we really need to pay attention to Kyron Williams as someone who could potentially just take over that backfield and be the guy for the Rams. And obviously that offense looked a lot better than what I think a lot of us were expecting, especially going up against Seattle. That was one of the more surprising outcomes of the day. And then just some handcuffs: Jerome Ford, Ty Chandler, Keontae Ingram. Jerome Ford actually played the Kareem Hunt role. We thought we were going to see a lot more pass usage involvement for Nick Chubb. He did have the 4 catches, but don't really let that fool you. He only ran 12 routes. So it's not like he was out there running a bunch of routes. I think Jerome Ford had the same amount of routes run that Chubb did. He was on the field for a lot of the third down work. And obviously, if anything were to happen to Nick Chubb, it would be the Jerome Ford show there. And then just some guys I'm watching, Sean Tucker. Rashad White was someone who was not efficient as a running back last year, and that definitely carried over to this week as well. So he's someone who you need to pay attention to and kind of keep an eye on just to see what ends up happening with that backfield. Rashad White did not look great. Had the majority of the snaps, the majority of the touches, just didn't do a ton with them, and that's kind of like I said, carrying over from last year. And then Joshua Kelly, this is a situation I really don't know what to do with. He had 16 carries. Don't know how I feel about it. He did go over 90 yards and a score. But we saw Josh Kelly have flashes like this in his rookie season, and then literally nothing came of it. Didn't do anything with it. So I wouldn't go crazy on with Fab on him. I wouldn't make him a priority on your rolling waivers or anything like that. But I think he's if you putting in like 3-4 rounds worth of waivers, I think he's worth like a third or a fourth. Um, Depending on what other needs you have on your team. I think a lot of this had to do with the Chargers running 80 plays. So there was a ton of volume, obviously, to go around. So I think that is certainly partly responsible for Kelly seeing as many snaps as he did. And it's not anything I'm concerned about with Eckler going forward, but definitely just something to pay attention to and something to watch in the coming weeks.
Yeah, and I will mention that I think a couple other things. At least in note, it's not something. It's more of a watch list player is Chris Rodriguez. Antonio Gibson fumbled early in that game, and he did. I don't think he saw the field the rest of the game, and Chris Rodriguez started mixing in that. But that is something we should be looking to monitor in that situation as well. But overall, let's go ahead and just jump over to the wide receivers, and of course, let's talk about Puka Cal, right? I mean, the
Yes,
dude
sir.
just went out, and now he was somebody that we talked about last week that you should be looking to add, widely available in most leagues, but I was not expecting that he was going to see a 39% target share on 15 targets in this game. He hauled in 10 of them for 119 yards for 21 fantasy points against the Seahawks. If there were any questions today, who is the leading wide receiver right now with Cooper Cup out, we have found our answer at Puka Nacua. Now, we also had Tutu Atwell, who saw 6 catches in that game for also 119 yards as well. But Puka Nacua, I think, is going to be the preferred target, at least for the time being that Cooper Cup is out, because he's playing that very similar role where doing a lot of similar things to what Cooper Cup does, running those short and intermediate routes. And he looked really, really good doing it. And so he is a must add in every league for me at this point. For at least for the seasonal future, and maybe something you look to sell high on because people are going to see this, especially if he keeps doing this, seeing this amount of targets. He is going to be somebody that we should be looking to to add because he is going to continue to see a ton of targets in this offense because it is devoid of a lot of talent here. Next up, you have Darnell Mooney, who is also another player that we talked about last week as a must add player, and he's rostered in only 39% of Yahoo leagues. But he caught 4 of 7 targets for 53 yards and a score against the Packers. He did tie the team, and he tied for the team lead in targets. He was actually one of the few bright spots for the Bears on Sunday. And he's going to continue to see favorable matchups with DJ Moore drawing most of the attention, who saw a lot of Jair Alexander today, which is one of the reasons why he only saw 2 targets in that game. And also the Bears just didn't look really good. Obviously, Roshan Johnson actually had a really good game, largely in some garbage time, but he had 17 fantasy points today in that game. But Darnell Mooney, I think, is a must add moving forward. And then Rashid Shaheed really had a really nice game today after missing most of training camp and the preseason. He did haul in 5 of 6 targets for 89 yards and a score for 19 fantasy points. As the number 3 wide receiver, Shaheed should continue to carve himself out a pretty solid role in this offense, especially with Kamara sidelined for the next 2 weeks. But I don't think he's going to be somebody, barring an injury like Michael Thomas, which could always happen, is somebody that I don't know if I would trust like as a week to week guy. But he did show a lot of flashes last year. Somebody that looked really good last year in Spurs, had a really solid yards per route run last year, and he's kind of picking up where he left off. So he is definitely somebody. If you have a deeper bench, like 6 or 7 bench spots, that I would definitely want on my roster, and he's definitely should be rostered more than 16% of leagues. Rashee Rice is the next guy that I really want to talk about. 36% rostered. The Chiefs' offense has definitely seen brighter days for what they look like on Sunday. However, I think Rice was one of the bright spots, hauling in 3 of 5 targets for 29 yards and a score. With Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore completely selling for week one and just looked completely lost. Rice could actually continue to see more work, and I actually think he could be the guy that ends up being that Juju Smith-Schuster role. He that is what they drafted him to be and what they thought he would be. And now, typically, we don't see rookies get a lot of targets, but I mean, for him to see 5 targets in that game, I think that bodes well for him moving forward. And Sky Moore continues to struggle. I mean, he struggled last year and he's struggling again this year. But with Rashee Rice, I definitely think he should be rostered in more leagues. Kendrick Bourne is not somebody I expected to talk about today, but only rostered 2% of leagues. Really tough to trust, but hard not to be intrigued by Bourne's 11 targets that he saw today. He turned that into 6 catches for 64 yards and a score. The team is pretty devoid of much talent in terms of the wide receiver department. Juju Smith-Schuster is Juju Smith-Schuster, but not somebody that I think has much of a ceiling. And then some of the other rookies, younger guys they have there. I think Kendrick Bourne, I don't know if somebody that I would want to start, but once we get to bye weeks and some of the heavy bye weeks, he could be somebody that carves out a much better role because this offense, at least in the second half, looked a lot better here. And they are going to be playing in games that are going to have to throw the ball this year with how packed that division is and just their overall schedule. And then Robert Woods, I guess it's AARP club today, with 4% rostership, a 6 of 57 yards, or he caught 6 passes for 57 yards on 10 targets. And he's likely going to serve as the short and intermediate route role with Nico Collins handling the downfield work. Woods certainly doesn't possess much upside in terms of what you're going to expect on a ceiling. I think that goes to Nico Collins, but he is a decent flex option with Texans likely struggling to be in the lead for most weeks. So he's going to be that short and intermediate route guy. And then I did put Allen Robinson in here, and I really don't feel great about it, but we're going to have to monitor things with Deontay Johnson, who could end up missing 2 to 3 weeks here with this hamstring injury. He did see a decent amount of targets in this game. And, while Allen Robinson, I don't think has a lot left, I do think that he is somebody that could earn targets here in this offense next to George Pickens and Patty Fry. So we'll have to see on that. And then other than that, it's the same guys we kind of talked about. Marvin Mims didn't really do anything today, but he's somebody that I still would like to have my roster moving forward. Jaden Reed actually looked pretty good. I mean, he was a jack of all trades, really did everything. He recovered an onside kick. I think he had a couple punt returns to almost 60 yards there. He had about 50 yards receiving. So I do think there are a lot brighter days ahead for Jaden Reed. So he is somebody that I definitely want on my roster too if he's sitting out there. And so other than that, the rest of the other guys, more later round guys, maybe not in your typical 10, 12-man league am I looking to go out and add.
Going to wrap things up with a look at some streaming options at tight end for week 2. Oh, really
It was a good
quickly, I
week for
did
the
want
brand.
to.
It was a good week for the brand. That's all I was going to say.
It was a good week, man. It was not looking good in that toward the end of the first half, though. I was starting to get a little nervous. Kevin I was like, "Oh my god, we talked about Laporta so much, and he doesn't even have a target yet." But then he came on a little bit. I think he had 2 catches by the end of the first half, and then 3 more in the second half. So it was good to see. I did just want to say really quickly, as far as the Kyron Williams acre split went, I did find some of the information. Kyron Williams played 53 snaps to Cam Akers 28, and he ran 29 routes to Cam Akers 4. So it might be it might be time for me to move Kyron Williams up into the ad instead of just the handcuff plus. So he's definitely someone who you should be looking for, especially if you need help at running back. But anyway, onto the tight end. We'll go ahead and wrap it up here. You were mentioning Sam Laporta. It was interesting to note that they were that the Lions head coach was talking about Jahmyr Gibbs, and they said it's by design that he didn't see as many snaps and as many touches. Meanwhile, Laporta saw 5 targets, played over 80% of the snaps, so that's a really good sign for him going forward. Gerald Everett was disappointing today, especially whenever you look at that scoreboard in that game, over 60 points. But we have to remember that Herbert threw for less than 230 yards, and Keenan Allen was the only Charger who saw more than 5 targets. With them going up against Tennessee next week, who just got torched by Derek Carr and the Saints, he definitely has a chance to have a stream-worthy week. So I think Gerald Everett's in play. And then just some other guys to throw out here. Zach Ertz, saw 10 targets today. No other Cardinal saw more than 5. Obviously, that's not an offense that we're going to be particularly excited about on a week-to-week basis. But if he's going to continue to see this type of target share, he's certainly going to be in the streaming conversation. Kind of the same thing with Logan Thomas. He was questionable Cole Turner was getting some hype throughout the offseason for good reason too. He was looking pretty solid. But Logan Thomas kind of came back and solidified himself as the tight end one. Saw a decent amount of targets and had some decent production. And then Irv Smith is another guy that we can look at in terms of streaming tight ends. Obviously, was not a pretty week for the Bengals by any means, but Irv Smith did end up running I think it was like the fourth highest routes run for the Bengals. So that is what it is looking like over on the waivers. We do have some questions, Kev. Let's go ahead and knock these out. Bronson, should I trade Michael Thomas, Sutton, and D Hop for Wilson or Diggs? I have Chase, Amon-Ra, AJ Brown with Addison and Cooks on the bench, 2 wide receiver, 3 flex PPR league. Seems like a lot, but it always also seems like you have the depth to be able to package those guys up. I mean, just me being greedy, I'd probably want something else and back in return. But if that's the only thing you can get done, then you're still going to have those names at wide receiver, some of that depth there too. Like I think you can definitely look to do it.
Yeah, I think it's like a normal league, normal people wouldn't be able to do this trade. Where I would say it's too much, and it still probably is too much. But I think getting either one of those guys, and I would lean probably Diggs as who I would want in that trade. But I mean, obviously, I'd be fine with Garrett Wilson too. But if you went Garrett Wilson, I would definitely be asking for more than just those 3, right? Um, and in any other league, I would say absolutely not. That's too much. But I think with as many options that you have, I think you're fine.
Yeah.
And just adding another elite talent, I think you're good.
Would you trade Geno and Russ for Lamar? 2 QB
Yes.
league. The other quarterback is Trevor Lawrence.
Yes.
Andrew, you have number 1 waiver. How would you rank Jordan Love, Mac Jones, Puka, Hayden Hurst, and Hunter Henry?
Just go get Puka. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, unless you have no other, like, I don't know what your quarterback situation is, but I don't think you have to probably put in a waiver for any of those quarterbacks. Honestly, I don't think unless you're talking like a 2 quarterback or super flex league or something. If you're not, then it's Puka and a cow. That's the way I would look at it. But the other 2 tight ends, you don't even. I mean, I think Hunter Henry's fine. He did score a touchdown today. He'll draw interest. I think he's a goal line threat every week. But I 100%. Yeah, I think he should be fine. Andrew, QBs are terrible. Goff and Pickens. Oh, Pickett probably. I'm assuming.
Yeah. I mean, if it's a is it a 2 QB league, Andrew? I'm assuming if you have Goff and Pickett, I think you're fine with Pickett. With Goff rather. Like I'm going to be starting Goff over Jordan Love and Mac Jones.
Yeah, and you get Goff against Seattle this week, who just made Matt Stafford without Cooper Kupp and a cast of characters just threw all over him. So we could get some fireworks next week, and I believe they're it is in Detroit, so which is also inside the dome. I believe it is at home. I'll have to look real quick, but I think it is there at home.
Debro, target Gus Hill or other options. Whenever we already went through the running back options, so I'll just throw this up for you. I need to move Kyron Williams up into the ads. But if I'm doing a priority ad for a running back this week, Debro, it's going to be Kenny Gainwell and Kyron Williams are going to be the 2 running backs that I am most interested in adding this week.
Absolutely, I definitely agree with that. I don't think you need to go after the. I mean the Ravens situation, and I honestly I don't think it's gonna be. I wouldn't be. I mean, I think Gus Edwards would be the one that you would lean towards most, like if those other options are gone. But like I don't trust. I mean, neither one of them did anything. I mean, just Hill scored a couple touchdowns on the goal line, but he did nothing else other than that. And they have Melvin Gordon sitting on the practice squad that they could elevate. Like this feels much like last year, right? Where it was like Latavius Murray and a bunch of other Devonta Freeman,
Kenyon
and
Drake.
yeah, and all these cast of characters. It's probably what they're going to do again. So I wouldn't waste any fab on any of the Ravens guys. Like maybe Gus Edwards just because of his history, but I don't feel confident in any of those guys. And I feel like they're going to be adding more players to the mix there. And who knows? Maybe this is where Leonard Fournette finally gets his opportunity to sign with, right? Like he has been sitting out there. He's been waiting. he feels like a guy that they could definitely look to add. So if he's sitting out there, maybe a speculative add on something like that. But I don't even know if that's something they would do. But yeah, I would rather have the other two guys for sure. So and yes, by the way, Andrew, the Lions are at home next week, and we know Goff plays way better at home than he does on the road. And I don't even think Goff was terrible on the road against the Chiefs. I mean, for the most part,
No.
I was just kind of a but this game next week against Seattle. This I can only imagine. I haven't looked at the implied point totals for the week yet, or the over unders, but I'm guaranteeing it's going to be over 50. I will be shocked if it's not over 50 points for next week. So if it's not, it's going to be pretty close to that. Because one, I mean, then we have to remember last year this game was 48-45, went absolutely nuclear. Not that I'm calling that, but it's definitely in the making to be one of the higher totals. So
50.5.
see, yeah, okay.
Lions 4.5 point favorites.
Yeah. So you're fine with Goff. Like I'm not.
Yeah.
I would definitely hold on to Jared Goff in this one. So,
Yep.
that being said, let's go ahead and we'll get everybody back to the awesome 33-0 beat down and I'm sorry everybody that played anybody that's on the Dallas has the Dallas Cowboys. Your week's probably over with after they have 34 points right now. So they're getting closer to that. They could be the number one overall player of the week outside of non-quarterbacks, right? Because they're getting pretty close, or they might even be the number one even over quarterbacks. Because I can't. There's not. I mean, Tua had a monster day, but other than that, screw the Giants. It's just out here with the Cowboys defense, or you're on the other side and you're really happy. So, anyways, keep it locked in here. We'll be back again very shortly with our week 2 rankings to talk about. So, have a good week. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below. If you have not already, hit that like and subscribe button. We will see you on the next one.